Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today, I'm joined by Taylor McMaster, founder of Dot & Company. Now, you may remember Brent, who was on our podcast, E2M CEO, he shared about the buy side of this deal. Well, now we have Taylor talking about the sell side. And it's not enough just to talk about the transaction. We went into what makes a good account management role and service company. That's what they do. They provide account management, fractional, and support to agencies. The system and the thing you need to scale and grow. A perfect fit for E2M. We talk about the process and attributes that made her business valuable. We talk about how her and her co-founder husband were outside of the business at the point of which they transacted, which made it very exciting for them in regards to how they can structure their deal. And then why she's stuck around, even though there was not a real financial incentive in the deal to do so, because she believes in what they're building. It's a very useful tool, not only because of our conversation around account management, but also to hear how a seller in a proprietary search found her perfect fit buyer. Let's dive in. Taylor, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Okay, so in my community and world, what you do is what so many agencies lack, and I teach them to go out and buy things that they don't have. And that happened to you. So if you could, maybe set up Unco and how this manifested, just get us up to date on your journey, and then I'm going to ask the questions that all the buyers and people who want to sell want to ask you.
Cool. So yeah, I owned Dot & Company, which I started in 2019. And truly, I started the business because it was something that I loved. It was, the part of my agency that I was running at the time. It was the part that I actually enjoyed. I didn't love the actual running an agency side of things. So I figured if I could just channel the parts of my agency that give me joy, maybe I could just do that and, be a contractor and work for some other agency owners. Along with, there was this big need in the industry for really amazing account managers. And I'm sure every agency owner listening is nodding their head saying, yeah, I could use a really great account manager as well. And so I figured if I could take what I was really good at and turn it into a business, it could be really helpful for so many agencies out there. So fast forward to 2025, I had built Dot & Co. into a team of 40 people. And we are pretty well known in the marketing agency space for providing premium client-facing account managers. And we work fractionally within marketing agencies to prove that account management is a very important role within the agency. And we also give agency owners a lot of time back. We want agency owners to focus on the most important part of their agency, which is growing it and scaling it and getting it ready to sell. And we allow agency owners to really step into that seat. So that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
For the agency owner who wishes they had a Taylor, what are some of the attributes that make you obsessed or your zone of genius client management and account management?
Honestly, it's something I've been trying to crack for years, Peter. And what we've come down to, and this I've learned through a lot of mistakes, so hopefully you can, learn through these, is that the first pillar you have to hire for is personality. And unfortunately, you can't train somebody to be warm, friendly, bubbly, caring. And so you have to make sure that the person that you're hiring for this role has those attributes. Secondly, they have to have a lot of experience in the industry. I have tried to hire junior people for this role, and I would love to have the time to be able to get them up to speed. But unfortunately, as you and I know, working in this industry is just reps. We have been in this industry for so long, we just understand what clients need and how we need to help them. So making sure you're really hiring somebody with years of experience in marketing, that's the only way you'll actually be able to replace yourself in this client-facing seat in a quick way. So personality, experience, and then of course you want to make sure that these people have very great background and experience in account management. So they have to either be trained by people like us, where we make sure that they have the skill set to be able to actually manage your clients. But two, these people are taking over the bread and butter of your business, which is your client. So we want to make sure that they are trained in retention, in upselling, in really ensuring that those people are going to stick around and they're getting results. So really want to make sure that they're well experienced in account management.
Yeah. Business is quite easy. And when you're a customer facing role, people discount smiling, enthusiasm, good energy, but it's critical. Clients leave because of the person they interact with, not because of the agency themselves. So you
Exactly.
play a vital role and then you systemized it. Help us understand how the business grew during that time. Because you
Mm.
were running it yourself. You said, hey, can I do this fractionally? Can I help others fill this gap, this need, and then you had to staff up because it's not quite staff augmentation. Maybe bridge the journey of scaling the agency, the business of servicing these agencies, and then kind of compare it to your competitors, which would be like staff augmentation or recruiters.
Yep. Yeah. So as I was growing the business, I realized that I was really good at account management. And I thought, oh, I can just hire people like me who have the experience and then they'll just be really good at it. But I quickly realized that there were certain things that I was naturally just doing that made a huge impact on the clients and the agencies that I was working in. So I realized I had to systematize how we were showing up as account managers so that I could bring somebody in who was an A player and just train them up in my methods to be that much more skilled and make sure that selfishly, I wanted to make sure that everyone who worked for me was showing up as if it were me. So, what we built was our school. So, it's a 7 module training school called CAM School, CAM School. And we essentially go through everything from onboarding to offboarding, making sure that clients are well taken care of. And what are the little things or big things that you're doing on a daily basis that make you an excellent account manager? So we systemized the training as we were scaling. We obviously had some ups and downs in terms of learnings and who we were hiring or who we were not hiring. But that school was kind of the backbone to allow us to only get the best of the best in the door and also to keep them accountable and measure them to those standards.
That's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
curious, Enneagram or DISC assessment, where do you land?
My gosh, I've done so many of them, and a couple of them have changed over the years because I think I've just like evolved into more like a CEO seat and a mindset. Definitely extroverted is big on my mind. I can't remember the actual name of it though. ENFJ or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because we talk about it from an M&A perspective that one of the ways to do cultural due diligence is to have these assessments of the temperament, personalities of the founders, but also the key people who are client facing.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful predictor of cultural alignment post close. And what you're describing is how do I find people who are, pun intended, tailored for this because it's such a person oriented responsibility, not an
Absolutely.
intellect or professional experience as much. If you don't light up by interacting with people,
Hmm.
having you show up to weekly meetings with clients is probably not going to be beneficial for your career.
And honestly, Peter, that has been a struggle for us as we were scaling because, it's not like we're just hiring for a skill set. We're hiring for a skill set plus a personality. And in order to want to do a great job at account management, you really have to want it. And it has to be a natural personality trait almost. So we've struggled with that over the years of when it comes to hiring because it is a very unique thing to hire for.
The reason why I'm spending so much time on this, just to give some context for the listener, is the fact that you built a system for expanding the role of account manager. And in an acquisition, especially one that has already an expanding headcount of service and clients, they get that knowledge, not just your people, not just your business. And that's one of the reasons why you were probably so useful and valuable as an acquisition target. So I want to make sure people understand the quality of the product and the service you are providing. So when we give the context around the deal, they just go, I've connected the dots here. What's the difference between working with Dot& Co and staff augmentation? So
Mm,
the competition, like, hey, help me fill this role.
yeah. So the biggest difference is that the agencies that we work with are generally in a need. They need somebody quick, right? They need somebody now and they need them trained. But what most agency owners realize is that they don't know how to coach and train an account manager and they don't know how to do it well. So, because this is our expertise and this is all we're doing, they're not only getting an account manager, they're also getting somebody to manage that person, to coach that person, to train that person. Also, if and when an account manager leaves or moves on, we can get somebody in there quickly who's already trained in your agency. So it's beyond just a button the seat. It's a whole system around account manage it with account agency.
Yeah. It helps mitigate key person risk.
Absolutely.
A lot of startup founders who are expanding through delegation get really concerned that these client accounts are owned by these account managers. And then the natural progression in the sector, in the industry, is the account managers go out and start their own things by keeping the relationship with something that they had previously. And it's actually the origin story for a lot of agencies. How do you circumvent that if you can, or how do you think about that?
As you were saying that, I don't think I've ever had an account manager from my team leave and go start their own agency, which is so interesting. So I don't know what I'm doing to avoid that, but I think the culture that we've built here at Dot is so unique in the sense where people really value the work that we're doing. They love that they get to work in multiple agencies at the same time and they get to learn and flex different muscles. They like the remote work, they like the flexibility. So I think we've built a really cool and unique culture that makes them want to stay or makes them want to kind of learn more in the account management role. I'm also generally not hiring entrepreneurs. And
I think you just landed on it. Yeah.
yeah, I steer clear of hiring entrepreneurs, AKA myself, because
Yes.
we get bored. We want to move on quickly. And that's just not the type of person I want. So I've always kind of been very careful to not hire entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of agencies, especially when founders are responsible for hiring, hire people that they get along with.
Yeah.
And it kind of leans towards the entrepreneurial drive. And although that's very helpful if roles and responsibilities aren't well defined and you want someone to be entrepreneurial within a company, that leads to them at one point saying, well, this is just part of my journey before I start my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where it sounds like you've systemized and have built a process around how do we find people whose zone of genius is this thing, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where they light up and get energy, versus I want to deal with running a business,
Exactly.
which, although a wonderful vocation for anyone, is really a project of resilience and sustainability over time more so than anything else. So that's kudos. So you've built the business up. How many people were you when you started thinking in strategic partners, potentially acquisition?
You know what? I've always thought about the end goal and the exit. I actually looked back this morning when you and I first talked, and it was 2021.
Yeah.
So
It
that
was
was a
early.
lot. That was early. So I started
Yeah,
the
you told
business.
me it was early.
Yeah, in 2019, you and I met in 2021. I was talking about an exit at that point. So, it's always been my end goal. So it's been something that I've been working towards. Every decision, every hire, every system put in place was because I knew I wanted to exit, whether it meant a real exit or just exiting the day to day myself. I knew that I had to remove myself from every single position within the agency. So I would say it's been kind of something that's been evolving ever since day one.
Yeah. When I met you, you were a workhorse. You were like driven, you had momentum behind you, you had strong belief, and you were looking at, okay, how can I accelerate, compress time, do things at a bigger scale faster, not just internally, but whether it be through exiting the business, how can I get to that critical mass? You had expressed personal reasons of like a more holistic experience of life rather than just the profession itself. It was really motivating. I was like, oh, I,
How do
I
you
had,
remember that, Peter? That was so long ago.
it's a defect, not a bit. So you've been thinking about it, and with the interview of Brett that we have, so you can listen to that as a partner to this podcast, you were in active discussions.
hmm
So get
Yeah.
us a picture of, okay, you've been building systems, you've been building an exit mentality, meaning I think this will go beyond me very quickly here. What did the conversations look like that sounded interesting or didn't sound interesting that you were having?
Yeah. So I had a few conversations since 2023 with I had a couple conversations with potential strategic buyers and a couple conversations with private equity kind of brokers, those kind of things. And nothing really, I couldn't see the long-term vision of working with any of those partners. And although I knew I wanted to exit to a team where it would be 1 + 1 = 10, you know? And so I was kind of casually having different conversations over the years. It just never felt like the right time. And then fast forward to 2024, a friend of mine, Manish, who is the owner of E2M, who acquired us, him and I were friends first. And actually, I look back at how we met. He sent me a cold message on LinkedIn. And this was in 2023. He had said something like, "Hey, Taylor, I see we're both sponsoring this event. Would love to connect sometime." And I was like, "Who's this guy?" And messaged him back. We had a conversation on Zoom, became quick friends. We just had very similar values. And we met, fast forward, in 2024 at a agency event put on by Jason Swank. We met in person. We were both speaking at this event. And at that event, again, we were just really great friends. We got to know each other. That year after, we stayed in touch. We'd text all the time. "Hey, how are you? How's life?" That kind of thing. And then it wasn't until October of 2024, 2024, where it was actually Brent's event. You Gurus was putting on an event. I was going to speak. Manish was going to speak as well, that we met in New York at this event. He was saying, "I'm looking to grow our business through acquisitions this year." And I'm like, "That's so exciting. Good for you." Didn't even think about, potential partnership. And he said, he was talking to one of our other friends about it. And our other friend was like, "Well, Manish, why don't you just buy Dot and Co?" And we both look at each other. We were like, didn't even think about that. And so we kind of opened the conversation there while we were together. We went out for drinks. We talked about it. I told him everything that was going on in my business, the good, the bad, the ugly, because A, he was a friend first, so I trusted him. But B, I never wanted to go down a road where he didn't know everything within the business, right? I didn't want to even steer him in the wrong direction. So we had a very open conversation. A couple weeks later, we met together with him and his business partner, Ronick, on Zoom. We, again, basically went through due diligence casually during this
Casually.
process. Yeah, casually during this process.
Friendly due diligence.
Friendly.
Yes.
He's like, "Should we send an NDA?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." Kind of had these conversations of what this would even look like if we partnered. And then ultimately we decided it wasn't the right time. I felt like I still had more to give in terms of getting it to where I wanted it to be before we sold. They weren't quite ready yet. So we were like, "Okay, let's revisit this conversation in a few months." So this was November. By February or March, he reached back out and said, "Hey, Taylor, Brent's coming on, and we're interested in talking about Dot and Co again." So we hopped on another call with Brent involved, and we kind of, again, went through another casual due diligence process. I laid it all out. At this time, Brent was just coming on as the CEO of E2M. And so it was just kind of a lot of moving parts at this time. I was going off on maternity leave, and it was like, "You know what? Let's just park this for now. We're both good. You go do your thing. We'll do my thing. Let's revisit this conversation." It was kind of this casual, "I'm not looking for other buyers, and you're we're cool. We're going to have this conversation again." So then it wasn't until November of this year, or of 2025, that we picked back up the conversation again. Went through another light due diligence, here's all our updated numbers for the year. Here's where we're at, that kind of thing. And it just felt really aligned. So they sent over an LOI. We kind of went back and forth on a couple of minor things. And then the
But
actual,
I want to
sorry.
bridge that before you jump into that.
Yes.
We haven't set this up as context. You're not alone in the business. You have Jamie.
Yes. So my husband also worked in the business.
Yeah.
So he was involved.
You're combining family planning, business exit and acquisition, day to day of the business, going out on maternity leave at the same time. What a year of parallel processing and tracks. What was that like?
It was a lot, but I think we're just those people. I will add, in 2025, we acquired another business in the construction space. So my husband was full on working in that business while also working at Dot. We have 2 under 2. We're building a house. We're building another building. We're doing a lot of things.
So when
So
people say they can't do M&A or don't have time for it, they can't sell their business. Taylor, what do you say to that?
yeah, I mean, you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So you had a courting process of friendly interest.
Yep.
You are expanding the family. You're expanding the family portfolio of businesses. Jamie is now being pulled out of Dot& Co into this company that you acquired and is full on supporting that business. So you combine that with maternity leave, you have a team running the show,
Yes. Yeah. That was
which is
super
actually
important.
very, very helpful with where you're at in interest of selling.
Yeah. So that was a huge piece of getting ready to sell, was ensuring that every part of the business operated without me. Because looking forward to selling, before talking to Manish and Brent and Ronik from E2M, I always thought when I sold, I would not want to stay on. That was just not of interest to me. I figured by that time I'd be ready to move on. So I knew that in order for me to be able to move on, I had to make sure I was replaced. And the timing actually worked out really well for me because I was on a 6-month mat leave. I was fully removed from the business and it was still operating without me. So I could essentially prove that you're buying a business, not me. You don't need me. And
And you
that
don't
was
need
a
Jamie
huge,
either. He's over there.
yeah, they were like, we don't need that guy.
He's over in a construction business. Take
Yeah,
him off the website. He's not even
ex-
a party anymore.
exactly.
Well, and that's such an important lesson for sellers. We have a question on our preliminary due diligence, which is what's the longest vacation time away from the business you've ever had? And if it's 2 weeks, it's not material. If it's a month, it's actually not material. You have to get into the multiple months that the business was continuing operations and growth
Yes.
without the founder driving it. And Matt Leave, co-founder, operating another business venture, those are things that are actually very productive signals to buyers that, hey, I'm buying a system that I can increase the potential scale of, versus I'm buying a very talented founder who's recruited a bunch of people very maternally around them to come work for me instead. So you said the LOI just had a little bit of nuancing, which is very common in proprietary deals where you've built a relationship and you're talking about the future collaboratively. And a lot of what the LOI reflects is that dialogue, give or take some expectation setting or realignment that's needed at that time. So when you signed the LOI, that's exciting. Were you back from leave?
Yes. So I had just come back very part-time. I was like filming some podcasts type of thing. That was it. So my full-time job was selling this company at that point because it was, as you know, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of back and forth, but we can get into this, but it was, from what I have heard in the industry about, an acquisition, it was very smooth, the actual whole process. Yeah.
The deals are quite easy. The integration part's the other bit. But you also knew the parties very well. A lot of a deal is rapport building, getting to know each other on top of commercial due diligence and all the requirements to get a deal done. And so you had pre-existing relationships. So that helped you compress time quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then you had a new CEO step in, Brent stepping in.
Yes.
Who is, and I said this on my episode with him, first 90 days, he had an event and an active acquisition to prioritize.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's a busy guy.
There's a lot going on for him. You had time to give to this. He had a lot. Okay, so due diligence happens. You signed the LOI. Were you excited the day you signed that LOI? Did you believe like it was a high probability we'll get to close signing of the LOI?
I mean, there's always the doubt in your mind. It's like, what happens if? But I thought there was a high probability just based on, this was the third time that we had this conversation. They were very serious. We were serious. So I felt pretty good about it, but I was still nervous.
Yeah, and they had done, of course, the acquisition of Brent's company. They had proved themselves as a qualified buyer with a vision. They have a great reputation. That you knew this is something that could get done. The strategic fit makes a lot of sense. So you just had a bunch of things that were checking the box. So you signed the LOI, mildly, celebrate, not to overdo it, because you still got 2 kids at home and a newborn.
Yeah.
So newborn and a 2-year-old, right? No, that would have been a year and a half, right? At the time?
6 months and just over 2.
Yeah, your hands are full.
Yeah.
So you go into due diligence. Who on your team did you pull into the tent? So what'd that look like?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. When we were originally working through the LOI, one of the things that they wanted was to meet our whole leadership team and 3 of our top account managers. And this is something that I pushed back on during the LOI process because I wanted to protect my team because there was still that nervousness for me that it wouldn't go through. And they
And
were,
you had been gone.
yeah, right. And it's like, she's coming back, but she's selling and like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And, it makes people nervous. So that was something that I negotiated on during the LOI process was that only myself, Jamie, and Tiffany, who's our director of operations, as well as Audrey, who's our assistant / chief of staff, those are the only people that can know about this. And they were like, yep, totally understandable. No problem. So we were like, okay, I feel like there's some good synergies here. They're willing to negotiate there. So this was end of November. They wanted to meet in person as part of the due diligence in 2 weeks.
Winter
Up in
the
Canada.
north.
Yes. Manish and Ronak flew from
Yeah.
India,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I flew from Halifax, which is 2 hours, and Brent flew from Denver, and we all met for 3 full days in Toronto and literally just broke everything apart. We were like, what do you want to know? We're here to let's brainstorm. And so that was obviously nerve-wracking because it was like I felt like I needed to sell it to them, although they already were sold. And it was just kind of this uneasy feeling. But once we were there in person and we were hanging out with them, I was like, okay, this feels right. They feel aligned. I feel aligned. But leading up to that, so we signed the LOI. The next day, Brent sent me this huge checklist of here's what you need to do for due diligence. And so because we were so organized internally, and Brent calls it this team of what did he say? Type A people, just because everything's organized. I sent the due diligence checklist to Audrey, my assistant, and Jamie, and they spent 3 days and they got the whole thing done. So we did diligence in 3 days. And we gave them every piece of information they could possibly need to go through. And then I think it was 10 days, 12 days later, we met in person. And then
Yep.
we closed 2 weeks later.
Yep.
So it was
Deals take 30
5
days. Yeah. 5
Yeah, I
weeks.
think it was
Now,
5 weeks.
for the well-prepared and experienced buyer, you can get it done in 30 days. And that also means you had counsel involved who
Yes.
kind of understand how to, like a streamlined support system for the transaction, who weren't overly egregious in their red lines, who understood the parties, you put them in check. Let's double tap how obviously you're obsessed with operations. Obviously, you're detail oriented. You'd built the company to exist for your extended leave as well as to build to sell. Double tap, did you have a data room prepared or did you just knew where everything was when you were as prepared for this request?
We just had everything organized. If they wanted access to an org chart, it was already done. If they wanted access to, reports on client churn, it was already there. We look at data so often and so regularly that it was just all organized and readily available. And just running an online company, everything is online. It's all, just a download away or a pivot table away. I think just having the right people who know where the information is made it super streamlined. And I did basically nothing for the due diligence. I didn't touch a thing. Maybe I put a couple marketing documents together or something like that, but that was about it.
Okay, well, this is going to be hard for someone to relate to unless they've gone through this before. What you described was the dynamics of a deal shifting, or at least your concern of the dynamics of the deal shifting. So you went from this courting process about the future potential of this partnership and this transaction to now them coming in and analyzing things with a critique or a questioning tone, and mainly out of curiosity because they have to figure it out. And you get a slight defensiveness, maybe minor, but pitching, convincing them, telling them how good it is. If you didn't have the personal relationship you had with them, do you felt like that could have been different?
I don't think so. I think it was what I expected going into diligence. I expected people to pick apart everything. And really, I tried to put myself in their shoes because if I was buying someone else's business, I would want to know what I'm buying. So I was very careful to not oversell things. I was very, if something wasn't working, I'm like, that's an opportunity that you guys can take and optimize this. that's not something that we put in place in the business. So I really didn't sugarcoat anything because I valued our relationship so much. I didn't want them to come in and then be like, Taylor, like, this is a mess. I wanted
Buyers will know at some point.
exactly. So I was like, you know what? I want to stay on and work with these people. So I need to make sure that they know what they're buying and that they feel good about the deal.
Did you have involvement when you and Jamie did the other acquisition? Were you part of that due diligence? Were you part of that transaction at all?
No, I wasn't.
But Jamie did, and he was part of this deal. Do you think that helped?
Definitely.
That buyer experience and
Yeah.
kind of setting expectations for you and supporting kind of the outcome that was needed for this?
Yes, definitely like knowing what to look for and, just the language around everything and working with the lawyers and working with the accountants and, making sure that what do we say? All the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, like making sure everything was just super well done. So he was experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, buyers make better sellers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So 3 days in the cold
What
versus
do you mean?
getting
I
you all
live
down.
here. It's
I'm
just a
just saying,
normal day.
they just all went to you in the cold.
Yes.
You sit in a room, pound through commercial due diligence. Any legal talk in person, or was that all reserved for remote time?
A little bit. So our lawyers were talking to each other, but then we naturally were just talking about things. Yeah. Not a whole lot, though, to be
Yeah,
honest. Not during those meetings.
it's typical. Yeah, so it's kind of like a quality of earnings strategy sessions,
Yeah.
collaboration, and then anything that would be negotiating points for purchase agreement. It's kind of reserved for after that. It's both strategic as a buyer because it's friction and you don't want to create friction in that time. But it's also really hard to have that dialogue unless your lawyers are there with you.
Yeah.
So you get there, you run through commercial due diligence, the strategy, any preliminary integration chat.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. We talked a lot about our leadership team and how the integration would work. We spent a lot of time looking forward and looking at how we were going to grow the business and scale it and integrate it with their business and where the cross-sell opportunities were, how we could optimize our business, fix any holes. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on previous because they had already seen it. And really, we weren't negotiating anything. We did all of our negotiations before the LOI was signed. So there was really nothing left to discuss. Rather, the only thing we talked about a bit was, what is my role going to look like? What's Jamie's role going to look like? He only stayed on for 45 days as like just a consultant, which we can talk more about. But really, it was just like, how are we going to help grow the business together?
I think it would be helpful to unpack two component parts of the story, which we haven't really kind of cleared up. You had built a business you could sell because you had been out of it. Your business partner and husband was out of it. So you technically have a strong case for I can sell this to you, proven system, and I'm gone. Pay me as much cash on close as possible, and it's your business because look at I could go. But you actually stayed.
Yeah.
So typically when someone stays in a transaction, their incentives are also tied to them saying in a future version of the business or a collaboration of that through equity or options in the go forward plan. What got Taylor to stay is my main question here.
Yeah.
Because you built something you could have just walked from probably on close.
Yep.
Besides the pageantry process.
I definitely could have walked. And, Brett and I talked about this because like I built a business that ran without me and we sold the business 100%. There's no earnout. There's no real reason for me to stay. It's truly, I think, something that I read and heard a lot about over the years when it comes to selling is that most people if you don't have what's next, you get, I don't want to say depressed, but like.
No, it's depression. It's post-deal. It's post-exit depression.
Post-exit depression. And I was very aware of that. And I knew that I didn't want to go and start another business. I didn't want to go buy another business. I just needed a break from being the boss. But I still loved what we were doing. They were very open. They were like, we want this business and this transition to be very successful. Would you be willing to stay on and see this through? And at first I was like, I think so. Like, I don't know what you're going to be like as a boss. And I don't know if I can have a boss. Like I'm kind of unemployable, you know? And so kind of leading into this, I was like, okay, I'll stay on for a year. I'll commit to a year part time. That's all I can kind of commit. And I will, work for whether like a salary. I mean, I do have upside if we grow the business, but I really just wanted to see it through. But now that I'm kind of post transaction and I am working in the business, I do kind of see it as a long-term thing. Like I love what they're doing. I love Dot, obviously. I love our team, and I'm having a lot of fun just being a part of the team, which looking back, I realized that I was really missing that. And, like everyone says, it's lonely at the top. It is. And I felt like I lost this sense of being on a team. And so I'm just really filling up my cup right now. And, I always say to people are always like, what are you doing next? Like, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to go build something else. I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm just having fun right now. In what world could I go get a job where I don't need to prove myself? I can work whatever hours I want and still be like super fulfilled on what we're doing together. So right now, I'm just honestly having the time of my life.
It helps that Brent came back too.
Yes.
So listen to that episode with Brent because he sold as well into ETM. And then he should have rolled and stuck around, but he took a year to come back to the company as a CEO. And so it's a great kind of hat tip or acknowledgement to the organization, what you're building towards, where you could have left, but you decided to stay.
Mhm.
And that's just a compounding acknowledgement of the potential for the business, which is wonderful. The people who aren't financially required or held to growing a company's vision and sticking around is a really good investment thesis from an outsider's perspective. And you're betting on yourself.
Mhm.
I also want to highlight you were doing something that you were good at when you started, and you probably did named irritatingly after me, the Peter Principle. You had probably ascended to running a business outside of the areas that you were getting the most excitement, dynamic with the team, client fulfillment service, the things that inspired you to start the company, you just no longer do at a certain stage if you grow a business. And to kind of go back into that without the financial strain or the boss burden is a very different proposition.
It is.
Speak a little bit more about that because I just think it's important for people to highlight you transcended from consultant or fractional contractor to employer to service provider to employer, and then you moved up the value chain to the point where you were happy being gone for extended period of times and ready to sell, and then you went all the way back down to say, how can I help again?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for me, I realized this in hindsight after I ascended. I was the CEO. I was no longer doing anything remotely close to what I started the business for. I wasn't managing clients. I wasn't working in marketing. I wasn't, living this lifestyle that I started the business for. I started it because I wanted to be, flexible. I wanted to be remote before remote was cool. I wanted, to work in marketing and just like do what I was good at. And then I was a CEO and I was like, this is really different. And it definitely burnt me out towards the end. And anyone listening probably knows, running a business is hard emotionally and just it's a big weight to carry. And so when I looked to sell and I said, you know, if I'm going to stay on, I want my role to be kind of what I want it to be. And if you want that, great. If you don't, I'm going to move on. And so luckily for me, the buyers were super cool with my vision of what I wanted my role to be, which is podcasting, which is creating content, which is networking, going to events. And it's
Marketing.
really, yeah, like marketing, keeping it high level. Like I get to talk to people all day, which is what I like, without the responsibility of running a business and paying people's paychecks and, that kind of thing. So I really kind of got to create my own role, which was really important to me. So I wouldn't say I like ascended all the way to the bottom, but I get to still use like elements of why I started the business in my day-to-day now.
Yeah, that's great. For the integration process, I mean, you're still early into it.
Mhm.
Describe what that looked like, what the plan is, just to give some context to or insights into those conversations and whether or not they've played out as planned.
Yeah, so I was quite nervous about telling my leadership team because I mean, I cared, right? I think that's just what it boiled down to. I didn't want them to feel like I was giving up on them or I was, just selling the business and running away. So we closed on January 1st. And when everyone got back to work on the 5th, I called each of my leaders on my team and told them individually, and they were all very excited. So that made me feel good. And also, I was able to say, I'm staying on for the foreseeable future and being like, I'm a part of this. So that was really great that I got to tell them one on one. And then we told the rest of my leadership team, or sorry, the rest of my team that day. We just kind of like did an impromptu, like, Taylor has some exciting news, come on. And then I sent an email right after that. So everyone knew day one. Day two, we told all of our clients. And then day two, we also launched it publicly. Then luckily, we actually already had our leadership in-person event planned for, I think it was 2 weeks later in Toronto. So that's when our leadership team was getting together, and Brent and Kevin from E2M flew in and spent the 2 days with us. So the timing was really great because they got to see Brent in action, got to learn more about E2M, and we got to kind of create this next vision together, which was really, really positive.
Yeah, versus having to recast the year plan
Yeah.
and almost kind of hide the fact that you did this transaction while everyone's talking about their priorities for the quarter. You got a real clean start to the year, which is a wonderful timing. Did that factor into why you wanted to close January 1?
No, we wanted to close because it was like the end of our fiscal year, and
Yeah.
we were like, if we're going to do it, let's just do it, you know? And now I'm so happy because it's what, January 28th when we're recording this. And I feel like we have a whole quarter under our belt. It's only been 28 days. So I'm so happy that we just sped up the close.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to double tap your emphasis, which is when a owner of a business sells the company, they're always anxious about communicating to their people. Whether they're staying or going, it's this uncertainty because you've been working on this project and haven't been able to disclose it to them. Did you feel any of that burden of like carrying a secret through this process, or had you distanced yourself enough to where you didn't see them every single day, so it wasn't as present?
I mean, I didn't really feel like it was a secret. Like it didn't feel like a negative thing. It was kind of something that like
Surprise.
like I was talking to E2M for over a year, right? Like this could be another year before it actually closed. So it was kind of just like a until I'm sure, I'm not gonna, like, worry you. So it was more protecting them than it was keeping a secret. That's kinda how it felt to me.
Great. Now I'm wanting to round out the narrative because you're still in the business. It's still fresh for you. So if you're taking a phone call or an outreach or a Zoom meeting with someone who reaches out and they want to learn from your experience how to do something similar or better, what's your advice to that founder who has this opportunity to sell and be a part of something bigger?
Do you mean, like, do you want advice on how to grow their business like I did, or
Advice on how to find a good fit buyer.
Ooh,
What do you think? What do you think was the thing that you go, I didn't even have to go shop this. I didn't have to
yeah.
go think of alternatives. I didn't go and try to get competing LOIs to drive up a purchase price.
Mm,
You found what you, I think, would label as the right fit buyer for you, and it checked a lot of those boxes. So if I'm a founder and I'm thinking about selling, and all I'm talking to are private equity people or strategics who just it's not resonating.
yeah.
It's not hitting the bell. What are some of the things that you think you did well that they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations probably so like I said, since 2023 to 2025, I had a lot of different conversations with people so that when the right buyer came up, I just knew, and it just was this gut feeling. And I think you don't know that unless you've explored all the options, right? Unless you've chatted with different strategic buyers, unless you've talked to people like yourself or learned from other people, like you need to find who's the right buyer for you, and then your gut will just tell you if it's a right fit or not. I never wanted to go shop the business around because to me it was never just a thing that I wanted to sell. It was my baby. Like I wanted it to be in the right hands, and that was more important to me than purchase price. So I think just, yeah, having those conversations and then just being super open to you don't know where that buyer is going to come from. Like I said, Manish and I were really great friends, and I had no intention of ever, quote, doing business together. So I think just, you never know. Just keep your options open.
You went into the room, Taylor.
Yeah.
networking at an event where you both were speaking, you cross paths, you were accessible and present to the industry so the industry could see you. And if you've been quietly running your own business and then pop your head out when you're ready to sell or starting to get exhausted, and then take calls from brokers or from outside parties, it's really easy to not find the right fit. So a great experience and great advice is go and meet people, be active in the industry, make friends. The people who will potentially buy your business are the ones you potentially already know. And that is such an amazing part of your story. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Given the fact that you're now marketing all the time now and doing podcasts, what is E2M and what are you trying to do as the combined E2M and Dot
Yeah.
for the future for the listener?
Yeah. So E2M is really cool because they were kind of working in parallel to what we were doing at Dot. So they've always been a white label provider for agencies. They help with the fulfillment backside of the marketing for agencies, and we're kind of white label front facing. So together, we want to be the go-to solution for agencies. So as agencies are growing and scaling, we're the people they can come to get not only the client facing team, but also the back end so that they can scale seamlessly, easily, and efficiently, and maybe sell someday.
And if I'm listening to this and I want to potentially join E2M as an acquisition target, what's your advice for that founder who's going, wow, I feel like I could be a part of that solution, or I'm at that stage of this journey? I would take Brent's call or outreach. What advice would you have for them?
I would say make sure you understand who your market is. Like, how are you different from everyone else? That was a unique selling feature for us. Like it was very clear who we serve and how we do what we do. So, really be clear and focused on what you do as a business and what makes you special. That's definitely going to make you stand out. But you have to make sure your values align with any buyer, but especially if you're looking to be acquired by someone like E2M, make sure your values align with theirs. So how can you understand who they are, what they're doing, and what their mission is, and just kind of get on that level? So yeah, network with Brent, network with Manish, Kushbu, with Ronik, with me, make sure you're in our ecosystem, and you never know what could happen.
Taylor, thank you so much for sharing. Hot off the press, mind you, only 27 days post close, a wonderful resource for any of those businesses who are looking to sell or potentially acquire. Taylor, thank you so much. Links on where to find you in the show notes. Again, a pleasure.
Thank you, Peter.
If you like this episode, probably like one of our other episodes, click here.